you really want me to tell the joke? for I was, is this what you? Yeah, okay. No, I'm supposed to be quiet. Should I tell the joke? Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a privilege to be here with all of you today. My name is Manish Papna. I'm the president of the Natural Resources Defense Council, but as Margie told me, much more importantly, I am the co-chair of the Climate Action Campaign and representing incredible partnership, that a coalition that's been put together, more than 60 groups, more than 15 million members that have come together to advance climate in this historic moment in time. And we're delighted to be sponsoring this event. What a moment it is when we think about what has happened over the past 3.5 years. One just has to think back at the end of the previous administration. 100 actions were taken to repeal or undermine climate, public health, environmental protections. Since then, the Biden-Harris administration has moved forward with over 300 actions to protect public health, to advance climate action, and the EPA has been at the heart of that effort. You think a little bit about the incredible work that the administrator and that the EPA have done around protections for public health, for clean air, for clean water, for tackling climate pollution. One of the big campaigns that the Climate Action Campaign went up forward with is Solutions for Pollution. It was a homework assignment we gave the administrator not that long ago. Out of the 20 rules, the EPA has finalized 17. 2 are still in progress. Not bad. And well beyond that, even bringing the climate and infrastructure laws to life. The administrator was just in Pennsylvania yesterday announcing $4.3 billion in grants from the Climate Pollution Reduction Program. Just an incredible thing. And to be doing all of that, kind of the agenda, the what, in ways that center equity and environmental justice, that integrate that into everything that the EPA is doing. So just a huge recognition of all of that. And being not only about what kind of EPA has done, but how it has done it. By starting to listen once again to advocates, to scientists, to frontline communities, in investing in the extraordinary staff that you have, and in embracing the urgency of the moment and the need for real rigor in developing protections that are durable. So just a huge recognition, not only about what the EPA has done, but how it has done it differently. And the leader in all of that, the administrator, Michael Regan, the clear and compelling vision, the steady hand, the incredible storytelling. Just deeply grateful for all that you have done. So we're going to have a chance to be in conversation with Ella Nielsen, who is a phenomenal reporter from CNN covering climate for many years, is going to take a moment, and in a moment is going to interview the administrator in what has happened over the past 3.5 years. I just want to close with a little quick anecdote. Today is a particularly important day to be having this conversation. Does anyone know what happened 9 years ago in the world of science on this day? I do. So if I wasn't standing in front of you, I would probably, if I really pursued, I would have been an astronomer. In 2015, NASA identified the first Earth-like planet called Kepler 452b. The one thing that they realized is the closest planet that looks and feels a little bit like Earth is 1,400 light years away. So there really is no planet B. We got to do what we can in the time we have to protect people and planet here. And that is what, Administrator, you and your team have done. So just please join me in an incredible warm round of applause for the Administrator, for EPA, and everything that they have done.
Thank you so much, Manish, for that warm introduction, and I don't have any planet jokes, so. It's really, really, really great to be here today. I just met with a number of the leaders here in the Climate Action Campaign, and we were sharing some war stories, and I think we have, made just such tremendous progress over the past 3.5 years, and so it's not lost on me that many of you in this room have spent years, if not decades, fighting for the progress that we have made. And, all of you are fighting for a cleaner, healthier, more equitable America. And I just want to say that my message today is fairly simple. I want to use this opportunity to publicly thank my staff at EPA, those who survived the previous administration and decided to hang in there and make up for lost time. But I also want to thank each and every one of you. You all have been knocking on doors, drafting letters, driving comments towards our historic rulemakings, building just this phenomenal groundswell that really has resulted in all of the action that we've taken today. And as Manish just said, the assignment maybe was for me, but you all are the ones that embody solutions for pollution. It is you that we've relied on to be creative and innovative to get as far as we have. And so I want to say that our world and our country is better off because of your persistence, your unwavering fight, and the fact that you all possess the knowledge and understand that the kind of change that we are pursuing can't be done by one entity, that it takes the collective, and it takes organizing and planning, dividing and conquering, deploying strategic ideas with precision to confront what we all know to be the most challenging time that we all will face in our lifetime. Advocates like you are fighting every single day for environmental justice and public health protections. You all will always have a seat at EPA's table because we believe in your vision. We believe in your precision, your tenacity. We believe, just as you do, that we want to leave a cleaner, healthier world for our children and our grandchildren. Your advocacy and support for the Biden-Harris vision for our nation has led to some significant climate victories, if not historic, whether it be the bipartisan infrastructure law or the Inflation Reduction Act, or some of the rules that we've been able to roll out, like our HAN rule, that is reducing elevated levels of cancer risk by 96% for some communities. So we've been walking and chewing gum at the same time. We've been fighting this climate crisis, but we have never forgotten that our core mission is to protect public health. And I'll say that your critical comments and your recommendations during our rulemaking processes have ensured that our process was rigorous and that our EPA staff stayed on its toes. My friends and colleagues, your leadership reminded me just a few minutes ago that while we've done a lot that needs to be celebrated, we have a few more things to accomplish. And we are relying on you all to keep raising your voices, and we are relying on you to keep holding us accountable. My job here today is to acknowledge that we hear you and we see you. And I am convinced that together we all agree that no matter the color of your skin, the zip code you live in, or the money in your pockets, everybody deserves clean air to breathe, clean water to drink, and healthy, livable conditions. And so with that, I say, again, thank you for being you. Thank you for the organizing. Thank you for the support. And I expect that you all will continue to help us cross the finish line or run through the tape. So thank you all.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ella Nilsson. I'm a climate reporter at CNN, where I cover many topics, including EPA and all of the many things that the agency has done over the last few years. Administrator Regan, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
I first wanted to start by asking, you obviously have presided over EPA at a time when the agency has done a lot, gotten a lot of rules out, but also has just received a really massive infusion of federal funding from laws like the Inflation Reduction Act and the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. How has that shaped EPA's work?
You know, I have to start by saying thank you again to this crowd. This group of magnificent people working in concert with the administration has helped EPA see an infusion of about $100 billion. And that's billion with a B. That really changes the nature of the agency. This is not your father's EPA. This is a new organization that has not forgotten its congressional authorities and responsibilities, which is mainly from a regulatory and policy standpoint. But there is sort of a carrots and stick approach. Now, as we put forward these technology standards that really push market ideas, reduce pollution in every single community that deserves to have protection, we can now also go into these communities with this infusion of capital and say, hey, we're here to regulate, we're here to hold polluters accountable, but we're not here to be paternalistic. And many of these communities, these cities and states have had solutions for decades. So now there is a combination of solutions from the bottom up, these regulations and protection measures from the top down, and EPA is playing a completely different role than we've ever played before. I was penalized by Congress for joking and saying we finally have some walking around money, but you know, when you have a little extra cash to give out, people receive you differently. And I think that our regulated community and those who we're protecting are viewing this EPA much different than they have in the past administrations.
And I wanted to ask also about the EPA's focus on environmental justice, which I know that has been a huge priority for you. Wanted you to talk about that a little bit, and also in light of recent news in Washington, D.C., you have worked closely with Vice President Kamala Harris. And I wanted to ask, you know, given all that you've worked on the last few years, how big will climate and environmental justice feature if she is elected president?
Well, you know, I'll be careful on the discussion of electoral politics, sure. But I will state the facts. And the facts are that President Biden and Vice President Harris have prioritized environmental justice from day one. President Biden is the only sitting president to mention the words environmental justice during a State of the Union address, not once, but twice. The Vice President as Attorney General in California, really exuded that polluter pay mentality. She pursued litigious activities against BP and Exxon and won. As a senator in California, she really was a part of the caucus that focused on environmental justice and equity. In California, she favored electric school buses. She favored removing lead pipes. And so what I've witnessed is a president who has been wedded to environmental justice from day one, and a vice president who has been a consistent partner with the president, but brings a long resume of tackling these issues. And so at the beginning of this administration, when we embarked upon our Journey to Justice tour and traveled through the Black Belt of the United States, went to Appalachia, went to Puerto Rico, swung by Alaska, and came back and really developed a strategy for some enforcement actions of the things we observed, but also developing regulations that would be applicable to some of the plight we saw. I've always had the backing of the president and the vice president. That has made it a lot easier. And it has allowed for EPA to be true to its mission statement, which is protecting the environment and public health for everyone.
Do you have any updates on EPA's outstanding regulations? Obviously, existing natural gas comes to mind. Can you say anything about the timeline for that? Will there be a proposed rule by the end of the year?
Well, listen, I'll say the solutions for pollutions list. What did you say? We're down 3?
Yeah. It's only 2 a month.
I'll start by saying, the president pledged 100% lead pipe removal. And we've got a lead and copper rule that we are moving very steadily on. I understand the urgency of reducing that lead exposure. And we hope to hit the marks that have been publicly stated, October, November. On existing gas, we've really put together a very strong process that involves all of our stakeholders. And this is a tougher one, which will require us really partnering and working together. There's a recognition of that sense of urgency. There is also a recognition of a conversation that we all want to have in terms of where is that pollution occurring and what control technologies are amenable to solve that pollution, especially in our disadvantaged and vulnerable communities. And so I have no doubt that we know how to run these processes. We have developed a stronger skill set in bringing our stakeholders in, and we're going to move as quickly as possible on existing gas to meet those goals that we promised. That's probably 2 out of the 3. I don't know what the third is,
Yeah.
but if you ask the next question, we can breeze on by.
I'm sure this crowd will ask you about the third one when this is all done. Moving on, staying on power plant rules. I'm sure you're aware, a little over an hour ago, the West Virginia Attorney General filed an application for an emergency stay to EPA's power plant rules after the DC Circuit tossed a similar effort. Are you concerned that the power plant rules could wind up at the Supreme Court again?
I see my general counsel sitting directly there. Listen, the first thing I'll say is I've got just a really smart, fantastic staff. And we took to heart West Virginia versus EPA and the Supreme Court ruling. So we took a step back to be sure that we're not looking at a clean power plant 2.0. We're looking at something completely different that's on the right side of the law. And we've measured twice, we cut once. We came up with a very strong, legally durable rule. And I think the DC Circuit Court was sort of that first test to co-sign on what we believe. I'm not surprised that we're seeing a different challenge. But what I can say is there were some things said by the D.C. Circuit Court that helps us to understand we probably did a good job navigating major questions and some of the things that are hanging out there for others to contemplate. So the answer to your question is I feel extremely confident in the product that we've put out, thanks to the input of many of the people in this room and stakeholders all across the country. And we'll just have to see what happens. I know we have had some court decisions that we're not too happy about, but I can tell you in anticipation of a skeptical court, we took our time when we put this rule out, as well as other rules that we've developed and designed over the last 3.5 years.
Right, and I know obviously, you and other agencies have been very impacted by some of the court's decisions this term. Obviously, overturning Chevron stands out. How, just generally speaking, how does that impact the EPA's work? And how are you trying to, work with what you have, basically?
Listen, I think that we are not happy about the Chevron decision. I would argue maybe Congress shouldn't be either. From an agency standpoint, we believe that Congress gave us certain authorities. We have the expertise. We've been developing the expertise for decades to make these decisions that Congress intended for us to make. And so this court decision is really a setback, not just for EPA, but for all of our agencies and for Congress's authority to make these types of decisions. That being said, we came into this administration understanding that the courts may be a little bit more skeptical than we would hope. And so we have been designing our rules, our regulations, and our policies in anticipation of some of the worst outcomes. And so while Chevron is a setback, I believe, for this country, I still believe that we've had that in the back of our minds as we've developed a number of rulemakings, and we'll just continue to move forward in the best way we can. Measuring twice, cutting once, and putting the most durable rules forward.
And I did just want to ask too, you mentioned the role of Congress here, and a lot of these decisions are talking about, Congress weighing in explicitly, same with major questions. Can you give me a bit of an idea of just practically how that impacts your agency and other agencies, waiting for Congress to weigh in explicitly on something?
If you take a look at the news or look out your window, we're all watching the climate crisis currently, presently, wildfires, droughts, hurricanes, flooding. The agency needs to be nimble enough to take action to curtail that impact. But also the agency needs to be nimble enough to be thinking of solutions that makes us all more resilient and more protective. The agency needs to be able to deploy dollars and resources to complement that, because we don't have any time to waste. So I don't know anybody that is thrilled about the timeline Congress is on. It's just trying to get that body to make a decision is frustrating for most Americans. You can look at the approval ratings and it'll say that. So I firmly believe that agencies are delegated certain authorities so that they can act in the best interest of the public. And I believe that that's the way it should be. And, the only thing I can say is if the courts continue to make some of the decisions, it will be up to Congress to rethink some of the positioning and take action. But I would prefer none of us have to wait on Congress for a decision and for these agencies to be able to make the best decisions, especially when it comes to protecting public health and the environment.
How are you and other officials at EPA trying to protect scientific integrity in the event that former President Trump is elected?
I think that we started on day one really wanting to win back public trust. And the way you win back public trust is transparency, strong data, and strong science. And so we put a number of measures in place to strengthen our scientific integrity and have it shine through our rulemakings. I believe we've done a really good job of that the past 3 years. And I think that unlike before, we were sort of unsuspecting. The agency had been doing its work for 50 years, and no administration had ever come in and ripped apart the scientific integrity or the staff morale the way the last administration did, the previous administration. And so we have been very careful to try to put in some infrastructure investments in our staff, in our processes, so that no one can come in and just reverse the progress we've made on transparency and science. The only thing I can say is hopefully the record that we've built will motivate people to make the best choices moving forward so that we never have to contemplate whether or not science should lead in the decisions that EPA is making.
And lastly, I wanted to ask, the former president and his allies have talked about, the idea of purging agencies, not just EPA, but others too, of career workers. Obviously, when you came into your role, EPA had been hollowed out from the previous administration. Could EPA come back from, a massive purge of career officials?
Well, on day one, when I walked into the agency, I started as an intern. I spent close to a decade at EPA. A lot of friends, a lot of colleagues that I communicated with throughout the entire time. And it was a low point for the agency. But, what you've seen over the past 3 years is the resiliency of the agency. Now, we lost hundreds of experts due to the treatment of the previous administration. And with the loss of those people, we lost institutional knowledge that we'll never regain. So we've been rebuilding and making up for lost time. But I do think people should pay really close attention to Project 2025. America needs a strong EPA. And what Project 2025 suggests is the opposite. And so our staff feels confident today in what we built. We feel good about the people we're protecting, the lives that we're saving. And I think it's our hope that our work will speak for itself and that will win the day.
All right. Thank you so much, Administrator. I think we are now going to turn to some reporter questions in the audience, which I think Gabby's getting a mic for.
It's quiet in here. Are these your door knockers?
Hi there, thank you for doing this. I'm Zach with The Hill. Obviously, this is putting a lot of carts before a lot of horses, but if you were asked to remain in the hypothetical Harris administration, have you thought about if you would accept?
Well, I've learned not to get out ahead of any conversations that I've had with the president and the vice president. And what my focus is right now is really just making sure that the American people understand and feel the historic nature of what President Biden and Vice President Harris have done with the bipartisan infrastructure law, the Inflation Reduction Act, the billions of dollars, the historic investments in tackling the climate crisis and protecting public health. There is a story that needs to be told, and we're going to continue to tell that story, make sure that communities are receiving those funds, and we have a job to do through this first term.
Thank you.
Hi. Good afternoon, Sean Riley, E&E News. Two-part question. One, have you been in touch or spoken to President Biden since his announcement that he will not continue to run for re-election? Second part, your former boss, Governor Roy Cooper of North Carolina, has been mentioned as a potential vice president potential candidate. What is your opinion of him? Have you been in touch with him at all?
Well, you know, I typically don't talk too much about my conversations with the president. Let me just say that the president is laser focused on the issues of the day. I get that politics have captured most of our imaginations, but President Biden is really focused on making sure that we extract those lead service lines and make sure that some of the environmental justice communities, like those in Lowndes County, Alabama, are finally receiving some of the relief that they're after. And so I've, you know, over the past maybe 2 months, I've had the privilege to travel with the president to Charlotte, North Carolina, where he visited with 8 families who lost their loved ones while serving a warrant, and someone used a high capacity weapon to take their lives. We left there and went to Wilmington, North Carolina, and talked about the importance of lead service lines and spoke with mothers and fathers whose children had been lead poisoned. The president is traveling this country and doing the business of the people. And when I'm with him, he's not so much focused on politics. He's focused on making sure that the things he promised when he ran, we're executing those things. I have a very high regard for Governor Roy Cooper. Governor Roy Cooper, you know, served in our state legislature, in the House and the Senate, 16 years as Attorney General, 2-term governor with a very high approval record. The governor knows how to get things done. And when I was Secretary of the Environment in North Carolina, yes, he was a Democratic governor, but we had a super majority Republican legislature, and Governor Cooper got things done. And I would say that I learned a lot during that process, and that's helped me get things done with this Congress and this president.
And have you been in touch with him in the last few days? Or are you still in touch with him?
The governor and I are friends, so we're always in touch.
All right, seeing none, I will close out. Administrator, thank you again so much. Lastly, I wanted to ask you, you know, obviously when the EPA was founded back in the 70s, it was created to protect, you know, clean water, clean air, safeguard public health. Sunday was the hottest day in recorded history. You know, 2024 again is breaking global temperature records. How has the agency evolved to, you know, combat the climate crisis as part of its mission, and what is the role of EPA in combating the climate crisis?
Well, I think that first and foremost, I would say that the technology standards that we develop are designed to reduce and mitigate the pollution that exacerbate climate change and public health issues, and we'll keep doing that. We'll focus on that. Many people in this room argue that EPA should have billions of dollars through the Inflation Reduction Act to think creatively about how we tackle some of these issues outside of our regulatory authority. And so just yesterday, we announced $4.3 billion in climate pollution reduction grants. And the beauty of that is that those resources are going to state and local governments or tribal entities that have been thinking about solutions for decades. So when we think about extreme heat, the locally elected officials in Atlanta, Georgia, have some pretty cool and creative ideas, but they're different than those ideas in Arizona and California. So to answer your question, we're able to provide billions of dollars to states that they can hand down to mayors and others to think about how to put in cooling centers, how to think about different concretes, how to think about different roofing investments. There are an endless number of creative ideas that we're seeing sprout up all across the country. And thanks to President Biden and Vice President Harris and many folks in this room, we are now putting the resources into the hands of folks who can help us solve those tough questions about extreme heat and the resiliency against drought and other things.
All right. Thank you so much again for your time, Administrator.
Thank you. Thank you all for having me. Thank you.
we don't want your microphone off. Ella, thank you so much. Really appreciate your conversation with the administrator. Manish, thanks for your opening. I'm Margie Alt, director here at the Climate Action Campaign. I'm not going to thank you that quickly because we have some business here to do together. Because I'm really glad you're here today, because you might remember we were with you on day one of your job as actually, we were there before day one because we had this project to help make sure that we could confirm climate nominees. And you happen to be right at the center of that work for us. So we, at CAC and our partner groups, we researched your background, squeaky clean, as everyone would know, and then figured out how we could best help make sure you were prepared, the Senate was prepared.
Oh, I thought you were going to say tank my nomination.
That would have been, that might have been easier, honestly. But no. And we're so proud when you finally were confirmed. And you might remember we joined you on your first evening at the EPA with a projection
Yes.
up behind you. And it was still during COVID, and you had your mask, and we were so proud, and you were so happy, and we were so glad the EPA staff was there to be able to be part of that. And since then, we have not looked back. You took over an agency that was absolutely devastated in so many ways. The people were hollowed out, the morale was hollowed out, the science was hollowed out. There was no effort to protect the environment or public health. There were efforts to protect polluters and their profits. And I don't know why you took this job, but I am really glad that you did, because you, in 3.5 years, have turned it all around. You have done such amazing work. You have reinstated science, you have reinstated the core mission, you have built morale, and you have made us proud of the work, and we're pretty tough customers, as you well know. So I have been thinking a lot about our partnership. We knew from the beginning we would have to work together. We weren't quite sure. We had to feel each other out. I would say over the 3.5 years, I've known that, partners play different roles. And you've been hobnobbing with the president, even though you won't admit it. You've been, talking to donors. You've been talking to the utilities. You get out there with the biggest thinkers on these issues. And then you have also spent more time than anybody, as you mentioned before, on the tour in Appalachia, listening to people who are affected by these problems, seeing for yourself what it is all like, and you have rebirthed the EPA. Of course, we had our role to play as well. You mentioned the door knocking, the phone calls, the talking to folks at farmers markets, the 2 million public comments that were not easily come by, the hundreds of people who came to testify to help make sure we got those solutions for pollution over the finish line. And we've also tried to make sure that we have your back. And we have been proud, literally, of having our blue T-shirts behind you and behind your ideas at every chance that we possibly could have done that. And so when I look at that work that we've done together, all I see is, well, I see some bad parts too, but the parts that I want to talk about today are how much difference your work has made in people's lives. I mean, I just think about the 2,000 people who might not have to go to the emergency room for asthma attacks because of the soot rule, or the 300,000 people who might not get asthma symptoms because of the carbon rules, or the millions of people who won't miss work because of the light-duty vehicle rule. And I think of what you've done to create jobs, and what you've done for the economy, and what you've done for people's trust in government, and what you've done to be a role model for people coming up behind us. And I just think our little part in this pales in comparison to yours, but we are so proud to have played it. And so for all of your work and for all of the success that you've had, I will be the first to admit we don't always see eye to eye. And we do have 6 months left, and we have a lot more to get done. So I don't want you to forget about that in my moment of
I was
softness.
just about to ask, where's Margie? And then she magically appears.
I don't want you to forget about that. But I do want to present you with, on behalf of everybody here, all of the Climate Action Campaign, our groups, our members, our supporters, the Solutions for Pollution Champion Award.
Thank you so
Because
much.
you are our champion.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
I'm supposed to get a photo shaking your hand. Do you want to say anything?
I'll be quick, and the one thing I want to say, and I see that most of them have left, but if I could have the EPA staff stand up. Yeah. Because a lot of us get the opportunity to get the praise and have nice things said about us, but it really is the EPA staff. And I'll tell you, the staff that hunkered down during the previous administration and stayed with us and stuck with us, I keep telling Margie that they're already working 24/7, 365. These folks are working really, really hard. So EPA team, thank you.
Peggy Shepard to wrap up.
Yeah. Well, I just want to thank you, Administrator, for addressing the priorities, concerns that millions of people around this country are living with every day. People who can't sleep well, who can't learn well, because we know the environment is where we live, work, play, and go to school.
Yes.
And so, again, thank you for addressing those issues. We also appreciate the commitment that you and EPA officials have made over the years to implement and enforce the kinds of policies and regulations that can and have improved public health. And we're going to continue to work together to achieve climate resilience and environmental justice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So, you know, I've been a long-time member of the National Environmental Justice Advisory Council. For decades, we worked to think about cumulative impacts, and I'm really glad to hear that you are making those considerations in current policies and activities, and that's very, very important, especially to the environmental justice movement, as well as to all of us here.
Yes.
I also want to just really thank you for, you know, rising to the challenge and really creating an EPA that we're not always mad at. It's kind of hard to be mad at the EPA when we're standing here with you. But again, we need a strong EPA, and we appreciate all you've done, as well as the colleagues at EPA. So many colleagues we've worked with over the years, and I know we'll continue to work with. So thank you very much. We appreciate all you've done. And, you know, we've come a long way, but we've got a lot to do. And we're all ready to do that together.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you so much.
Thank you all for coming. There's refreshments outside. Thank you, Administrator.